It was on a rainy night like this one that my fists finally retaliated. The sound of metal against flesh still echoes in my nightmares. I remember the blood dripping down the iron bar, mixing with the rainwater on the living room floor. The screams, the sirens, the accusations that destroyed what was left of my life. You think you know my story from the newspapers, but nobody knows what happened behind those walls. The hell began long before that night. And now, sitting in this empty park, I can finally tell the truth. My name is Michael. I'm 19 now. It's only been 3 months since I got out of juvenile detention, where I spent almost 2 years of my life for something I didn't commit. At least not the way they told it. I'm sitting in this empty park in Detroit because I can't stand being between 4 walls for too long anymore. I spent too much time confined. The cloudy sky above my head reminds me that freedom has a bittersweet taste. When you carry the weight of a past like mine, people look at you differently now, as if they could see through me, as if they knew what I did that night. But nobody really knows. Nobody saw what happened before that moment. Nobody saw the years of pain that led me there. They say I'm a monster, that I attacked my own father with an iron bar, and then, well, the accusations about what I supposedly did to my mother are so absurd I can't even repeat them. Lies. All lies that he invented. But who would believe a troubled teenager against the word of a family man? Before judging, I want you to listen to me. I want you to understand every step that led me to that moment. Maybe in the end you'll still think I'm guilty, but at least you'll know the truth. And the truth is more complex than any newspaper headline could capture. If you're really paying attention to me, if you can see beyond appearances and want to know the other side of this story, please like this video right now. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to not miss any account, and comment where you're watching from. It may seem silly, but knowing there's someone on the other side actually listening makes all the difference for someone who's been silenced for so long. And believe me, what I'm going to reveal about that night will completely change what you think about my story. Nobody is born violent. Nobody chooses the path of hatred when they have other options. What happened to me was the result of years living in a nightmare that nobody saw. And it all started much earlier than you imagine. I was born in a simple neighborhood in East Detroit. Our house was small, but at the beginning it was a home. My father, Robert, worked as a construction worker. My mother, Sarah, cleaned houses in the richer neighborhood near ours, and I had my brother, Lucas, 2 years older than me. We were a normal family, you know. We didn't have much money, but in the first years I remember some happy moments. My father played ball with me and Lucas at the field near our house. My mother sang while she cooked. I remember the smell of bacon and eggs on Sundays, the laughter watching Sunday football. It seems like another life now. Everything changed when I was about 8 years old. My father lost his job at the construction company. At first, he looked for work every day. He left in the morning with his lunchbox under his arm. He came back later and later, more and more frustrated. That's when he started drinking more than normal. The first time I saw my father different was on a Friday night. He arrived stumbling, his breath heavy with whiskey. My mother asked if he had eaten anything. He flipped the kitchen table. The plates shattered on the floor. Lucas and I ran to our room. We stayed under the bed, listening to the screams, the sound of things breaking. The next day, my mother had a cut on her lip. She said she had slipped. I was only 8 years old, but I already knew it was a lie. After that, things only got worse. My father would get occasional odd jobs, but the money went almost entirely to drinking and later to worse things. I began to notice how he and my mother sometimes seemed strange. Red eyes, disconnected speech, slow movements, or extreme agitation. I only understood years later that they had started using drugs. I remember one time, I must have been about 10, when I found my mother sleeping in the bathroom, a syringe fallen beside her. I called Lucas in panic. He took me away from there. He said our mother was just tired, but her arms had purple marks that weren't from fatigue. Over time, drugs transformed my parents. They became different people, unrecognizable. The little money that came in disappeared quickly. I started to notice that objects disappeared from home. The radio, then the TV, even my mother's good pans. Many nights we had nothing to eat. Lucas, at 12, started doing odd jobs at the neighborhood convenience store. I collected cans after school. We tried to maintain some normalcy, attend classes, but at home the hell only increased. My father started using me as an assistant in his schemes. He'd send me to deliver packages to scary men in dark alleys. "Go on, kid." "They won't suspect a child," he'd say. If I refused, I'd get beaten until I couldn't get up. My mother, who used to defend me, now participated in the abuse. When she was under the influence of drugs, she blamed me for everything, for the poverty, for the addiction, for being trapped in that life. "You were the curse that destroyed our family," she would scream. "If you hadn't been born, we would have had money. Your father wouldn't have lost his job, having to support another mouth." At 12, I learned to sleep with one eye open. I never knew when one of them would enter the room in a fit, looking for money or simply wanting to take out their anger on someone. Lucas tried to protect me. He would interfere when he could, divert their attention to himself. Sometimes it worked, other times it didn't. Once, when he tried to prevent my father from forcing me to steal from the bakery, he ended up with a broken arm. He spent 2 days at home moaning in pain before we could convince my mother to take him to the emergency room. I tried to ask for help. I talked to a teacher when I was 13. She called Child Protective Services. They came to our house, but my parents knew how to pretend. Our house was clean that day. They were sober, said the right things. The social worker said I had a vivid imagination and that I should value my parents more. That night, I was beaten so badly that I couldn't go to school for a week. After that, I learned to stay quiet, not to trust anyone, to endure in silence. At school, I became a ghost. I didn't talk to anyone. My grades dropped. The teachers labeled me as problematic. The other students avoided me. I was alone, except for Lucas. But even Lucas began to distance himself. At 16, he spent less and less time at home. He got a better job at an auto repair shop. He worked overtime, slept at friends' houses. I don't blame him. He was trying to survive. I, at 14, was trapped in that hell, with no way out, no hope. Each day was a fight to simply continue existing, and the worst was yet to come. The day I turned 15 passed unnoticed. Nobody remembered. Nobody mentioned it. I almost forgot myself until I saw the date on the school board. I went home that day feeling an emptiness I can't explain. It wasn't sadness, it was something deeper, as if I were disappearing. It was around this time that my father started using me in even worse ways. He had debts with local drug dealers and offered me as labor to pay what he owed. I spent entire nights packaging drugs in an abandoned warehouse. Other times, they sent me to keep lookout while they did business. If I fell asleep or seemed inattentive, my own father would beat me in front of them to show discipline. One night, one of the dealers suggested I could make bigger deliveries. I had just turned 16, but I was skinny and looked younger. "If they catch him, he gets less time," the guy said, laughing. My father agreed immediately, offered his own son as a shield. That's when I understood. To him, I wasn't a son. I was a tool, a disposable object. My mother got worse every day. The moments of lucidity became increasingly rare. When she was sober, she cried compulsively. She said we were all cursed. When she used drugs, she became cruel. She'd throw food on the floor and force me to eat on all fours. She'd laugh while I tried not to cry. "You're just a dog, Michael. A stray that nobody wants, not even God wants you." There were days when she'd lock me in the closet under the stairs for hours, sometimes a whole day without food or water. She said it was for me to think about my sins. What sins could a child have committed to deserve that? Lucas appeared less and less. When he came, he tried to bring me hidden food, clean clothes, sometimes even school supplies. But he had his own life now. He was in a serious relationship, talked about moving out. I knew he was also a victim, that he couldn't save me without drowning himself. One night, I woke up with my father dragging me out of bed by my hair. He was having an episode, his eyes glazed, foam at the corners of his mouth. He screamed that I had stolen his money. I hadn't, of course. He had probably spent it all on drugs and forgotten. He dragged me to the backyard, where there was an old water tank. He put my head in there, kept me submerged until my lungs burned. When he pulled me back as I choked, trying to breathe, he whispered in my ear, "Next time I won't pull you out." I started to plan my escape. I gathered every penny I could, hid it in a hole I made in the wall behind the bed. I thought about running away to another city, anywhere far from there. Maybe find Lucas later when I was safe. But then I discovered something that changed everything. One afternoon when my parents had gone out, I searched the house looking for anything I could sell. In the back of a drawer in their room, I found a shoebox with documents. Among them was a death certificate of a child named Richard, deceased at just 2 months old. In the causes, it said, mechanical asphyxiation. I kept looking and found newspaper clippings. My parents had been investigated for the death of this baby, my younger brother, whom I didn't even know existed. The suspicions fell on them, but for lack of evidence, the case was archived. I was in shock. Could they have? I couldn't even complete the thought. When I heard the gate, I quickly put everything away, but my father noticed something was different. He always had a sixth sense for lies. That night, he called me to the garage. He said he needed help fixing something on the car. As soon as I entered, he closed the door. "You've been messing with my things today?" It wasn't a question. I tried to deny it, but he knew. He came at me with a screwdriver in his hand. "Haven't you learned yet that in this house, curiosity kills?" What happened next was one of the worst beatings I've ever suffered. He avoided my face. He knew exactly where to hit to cause pain without leaving visible marks. When he finished, I could barely stand up. "If you open your mouth about anything you saw, I'll end you and Lucas, understood?" I understood. And at that moment, something inside me changed. A switch was turned off. Fear gave way to something colder, more calculated. I began to observe my parents with different eyes, no longer as a victim, but as someone waiting for the right moment. The following weeks were a nightmare in slow motion. My father seemed to sense that I was different. He intensified the abuse as if he wanted to break me for good. My mother, in one of her rare moments of sobriety, found me crying in the bathroom. For a moment, I saw a flash of recognition in her eyes, as if she remembered she was my mother. She touched my bruised face, opened her mouth to say something. Then my father shouted from outside, calling for her. The moment passed. She moved away as if my touch burned. "Clean your face and go buy cigarettes for your father." It was the last time I saw any humanity in her. Lucas came to visit me after almost a month absent. He was horrified by my condition. I had lost weight, had deep dark circles, was limping from a leg due to a particularly strong blow my father had given me with a pipe. "Come away with me," he begged. "I'm saving money. In 2 months, I can rent a place for us." 2 months seemed like an eternity, but for the first time in years, I had a spark of hope. I would endure 2 more months for Lucas. For myself. That same night, my parents arrived more drugged than they had ever been before. Something stronger, more dangerous. Their eyes didn't seem human. They were talking about money, about how much they owed, about what they could sell. "What about the kid?" my mother suggested, her voice dragging. "Cuz told me he knows some guys who pay well for young boys." My blood froze. My own father considered the proposal for a moment, looking at me as if assessing merchandise. "Maybe," he muttered. "I'll take him there tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I knew I had reached the point of no return. I couldn't wait 2 months, maybe not even 2 days. The cold feeling that had been growing inside me crystallized into something solid and sharp. It was no longer just survival. It was something more. Something that scared me, but that I could no longer ignore. It was a Tuesday. It had been raining since dawn, one of those heavy rains that make the city stop. My parents had spent the whole day at home, restless like caged animals. Withdrawal made them violent. The air in the house was heavy, electric. I was washing the dishes when I heard my father shouting my name from the living room. His tone made my muscles immediately tense. It was the tone that preceded the worst moments. When I entered the living room, I saw my mother sitting on the sofa, smoking compulsively. My father was standing, holding an empty wallet. "Where's the money that was here?" I don't know about any money, I answered automatically. He advanced, grabbed me by the neck, pushed me against the wall. I could smell the whiskey and something chemical on his breath. Don't lie to me, you piece of shit. There was $200 here yesterday. $200? Probably what was left of Lucas's salary that he left for me to survive the month. Money my father should never have found. I didn't take anything. The first punch hit my stomach. I doubled over in pain, without air. He continued methodically, as if he was doing a job. My mother got up, stumbling. Hit his face, Robert. Hit him until he talks. I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. There was nothing of the mother who once sang me to sleep. She was a stranger consumed by addiction, by anger, by hatred of her own life. My father threw me to the floor, started kicking me in the back, in the legs. You goddamn thief, just like that good-for-nothing brother of yours. Something strange happened. Then, in the midst of pain, I felt a sudden calm, as if I was observing the scene from outside my body. I saw my father moving away to get something. I saw my mother laughing, a cigarette hanging from her dry lips. I saw the iron bar that my father used to lock the gate leaning against the wall within my reach. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was as if another person controlled my body. My hand grabbed the cold, heavy bar. When my father returned, he didn't see me get up. He was too busy, looking for his belt, his favorite weapon. He only realized what was happening when the bar hit his back. The sound was horrible, a dull thud, followed by a guttural scream. He fell to his knees, too surprised to react. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I knew if I stopped, I was dead. I hit his back again, his arms when he tried to protect himself. I heard my mother screaming, but it seemed to come from very far away. I don't know how many blows I gave. 2, 10. It all blends in my memories. I just know that I stopped when the bar slipped from my sweaty hands. My father was on the floor, moaning, bleeding. I didn't kill him. Something inside me still knew the limits. Or maybe I just lacked courage. My mother was hysterical, screaming that I had gone crazy, that I was going to kill everyone. Through the window, I saw that the neighbors were gathering outside, attracted by the screams. Someone must have already called the police. I was breathing heavily, in shock with what I had just done. It was in this moment of vulnerability that my father showed that even injured, he was still more dangerous than I would ever be. With an immense effort, he dragged himself to the phone. His voice, when he spoke to the police, was full of pain, but strangely controlled. "Please, come quickly," he whimpered. "My son, he went crazy, attacked me and his mother with an iron bar, did horrible things to my wife, things I can't even say." I was paralyzed, not understanding what was happening. What lie was that? When I realized his plan, it was already too late. My mother, following his lead, tore her own blouse and began to scratch herself, to create marks on herself. "He tried to kill us," she sobbed to the neighbors who now crowded at the door. My own son. A monster. I tried to explain, to shout the truth, but who would believe it? A troubled teenager against 2 respectable neighborhood adults. The sirens were approaching. I thought about running away, but where to? I was cornered, not just physically, but by the web of lies my parents were weaving around me. When the police entered, the scene was set. My father, bloodied on the floor, my mother appearing to be in shock with marks all over her body, the iron bar with my fingerprints, and me standing in the middle of the living room with blood on my clothes, unable to formulate a coherent defense. He did things with that bar. To my wife, things a human being wouldn't do. My father whispered to the police officers who looked at me with disgust, with anger. I tried to shout the truth, but one of them hit me with his baton before I could speak. I fell to the floor, feeling the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. "Shut up, you monster." And so I was taken, handcuffed, with the worst accusations being whispered about me. Nobody wanted to listen to me. Nobody wanted to know the truth. On the way to the police station, looking through the patrol car window, I saw Lucas arriving desperately. Our eyes met for a second. I saw the confusion, the horror on his face. He was the only person who knew the truth, who could defend me. But as I would discover later, the system had already condemned me. The word of a delinquent against that of traumatized parents. There was no competition. Lucas tried to testify in my favor. He talked about the abuse, about the drugs. Nobody believed him. Without physical evidence, without medical records, since we had never gone to the hospital, it was just his word against my parents. I went to a hearing with a judge who barely looked at me. I heard terms like sociopath, pervert, violent. I was sent for psychological evaluation, where a hurried professional concluded that I had dangerous antisocial tendencies. I tried to tell my story to her, but she had already decided who I was before even meeting me. The sentence came quickly. Juvenile detention center for serious assault, with the possibility of extending the sentence depending on my progress. On the day I was taken, I saw my parents in court. My father, already recovered from his injuries, looked at me with a little smile of victory. My mother avoided my eyes. Perhaps deep down there was still a fragment of conscience in her. The doors of the detention center closed behind me. I had just turned 17, and at that moment, I believed that my life had ended there. The first days in the detention center were the worst. I was the boy accused of horrible things. Rumors spread. Even among offenders, there are hierarchies, codes. I was at the bottom of the pit. I got beaten up a lot in the first months. I tried to isolate myself, to become invisible. I quickly learned the unwritten rules of the place. Who to command, who to obey, when to speak, when to be silent. Lucas came to visit me whenever he could. He was my only contact with the outside world. My parents never showed up, not once. For them, I had served my purpose. I had been the perfect scapegoat. During the first year, I plunged into a deep depression. I saw no point in fighting. The injustice of what had happened consumed me. In the worst moments, I thought about ending it all. It was one of the educators at the center who started to change that, Mr. Paul. He had been a police officer before working there. He had seen it all, he said. And for some reason, he believed me when I told my story. I've been in this system long enough to recognize when something doesn't make sense, he told me one day. And your file doesn't match who you are. It was the first time that someone inside that place saw me as a person, not as a criminal. Mr. Paul started lending me books, encouraged me to resume my studies inside the center. He said the best revenge against an unjust system was to leave it better than I entered it. Gradually, I began to change my perspective. I couldn't change the past, but the future was still open. Lucas was also crucial. He had gotten a better job. He was saving money. When you get out, we'll live together, he promised at each visit. I'm preparing everything. During those 2 years at the center, I learned a lot about myself, about control, patience, planning. I faced my demons on the long nights of insomnia. I had to deal with the anger that still boiled inside me. I started helping other young people at the center, those who arrived scared as I had arrived. I discovered that helping others helped me too, gave me a purpose. Time passed. I turned 18 inside those walls. I was afraid they would transfer my case to the adult system, but Mr. Paul and other staff who had seen my progress interceded. Lucas hired a lawyer with his savings, and then 3 months ago, the doors opened. I was free after almost 2 years. The world out there seemed different, brighter, noisier, and I was different too. Quieter, more observant, more aware of my own limits and capabilities. Lucas kept his promise. We're sharing a small apartment in the south side, far from the old neighborhood. He helped me get a job at the same repair shop where he works. I'm trying to finish high school at night. About my parents, I don't know much. Lucas said my father ended up being arrested for drug trafficking 8 months after I was admitted. My mother disappeared. Maybe she went back to the rural area she came from. Part of me hopes she found help, but I know it's unlikely. Sometimes I still wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Lucas comes running, calms me down, says everything is okay. Now I'm trying to believe that. I don't know if what I did that night was right. I know I was defending myself, that I was at the limit, but violence generates more violence. That's something I learned in the worst possible way. What scares me the most isn't what I did, but what I could have done. At that moment, with the iron bar in my hand, I wanted my father to feel all the pain he had caused me. I wanted him to understand what it's like to live in constant fear, and that makes me just like him. I'm trying to rebuild myself now, one day at a time, learning to trust again, to feel again. It's a slow and painful process. There are days when it seems impossible, but I'm here. I survived. And maybe that's the greatest act of rebellion against everything they tried to do to me. If you've come this far and really understood what I went through, I ask you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to receive notifications of new accounts, and comment what time it is where you are right now. It may seem like a strange request, but knowing that there's someone on the other side at this exact moment sharing a little of this burden with me makes me feel less alone in this journey. Sitting here in this empty park, watching the city lights begin to turn on, I think about everything I've learned. The time I spent in the detention center taught me the importance of patience, not acting on impulse, thinking about consequences. I also learned that stories like mine aren't unique. I met so many young people in there with similar trajectories, families destroyed by drugs, abandonment, abuse that nobody saw or wanted to see. We are the invisible ones in society until something explodes and we become newspaper headlines. At the center, I participated in a therapy group. At first, I resisted. I thought it was just another trap of the system, but gradually I began to speak. The psychologist, Dr. Martha, wasn't like the one who evaluated me at the beginning. She really listened. It was with her that I understood that my parents were also victims in a way. Not that it justifies what they did. Nothing justifies it, but understanding the roots of the problem helped me process my anger. I discovered that my father had grown up being beaten by his own father, that my mother had been abandoned in adolescence and lived on the streets. The cycle of violence came from long before me, and that's when I made my most important decision. This cycle would end with me. I would never be like them. Lucas has been my safe harbor in this new phase. He carries his own guilt for having abandoned me in that house, as he says. I try to convince him that he too was a victim who did what he could. Sometimes at night I hear him crying in the room next door. The scars aren't just mine. I'm trying to rebuild my identity now. For so long, I was just the troubled son, the delinquent, inmate number 247. Now I can be just Michael again, or a new version of him. Working at the repair shop has helped me. I like fixing broken things. There's something symbolic about it that comforts me. My boss says I have talent, that I learn quickly. It's good to be praised for something positive for the first time. Some ghosts still haunt me. I have frequent nightmares about that night, about the feeling of the iron bar in my hand, about my father's victorious look as I was being taken away, about my mother's silence. Mr. Paul, the educator who helped me at the center, still keeps in touch. He visits me sometimes, asks how I'm adapting. It was he who suggested that I tell my story, that maybe it could help other people in this situation to seek help before they reached the point I reached. That's why I'm here in this park, talking to you. I'm not proud of what I did. I'm not seeking absolution. I just want you to understand that nobody is born violent. Violence is learned. It's a response to desperation, to feeling cornered. If I could go back in time, I would seek help in another way. I would insist more with the teachers, with social workers. Maybe I would try to record the abuse as proof. I don't know. It's easy to think about this now, with a cool head. In the middle of the hurricane, you just try to survive. My biggest fear today is meeting my parents again. I don't know what I would do, I don't know what I would feel. Part of me still wants justice. Another part just wants to forget and move on. I'm learning to forgive, not for them, but for me. Because carrying this hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The future is still uncertain. I have nightmares, panic attacks, moments when I feel like I'm going back to that house, that night. The psychiatrist at the health center says it's post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm taking medication, doing therapy, one day at a time. There are good moments too. The feeling of receiving my first honest paycheck, The pride in Lucas's eyes when I finished the first semester in the adult education program. The quiet nights watching TV with my brother, eating pizza like normal people. Maybe one day I'll be able to tell this story without my heart racing, without my hands shaking. Maybe one day it will become just a part of my past, not something that defines who I am. Until then, I keep trying. I continue learning to live in this world that for so long only showed me its cruelest side. If you're going through something similar, if you know someone in this situation, seek help. There are people who care. There are exits that don't involve violence. Don't wait until the point of no return, as I waited. And if you just stopped by to hear my story, thank you. Sometimes being heard is all we need to feel human again. Night is falling now. I need to go home. Lucas must be worried. It's still difficult for him when I'm late. Old fears die hard. Tomorrow will be a new day. One more step in this journey of reconstruction. One more chance to prove, mainly to myself, that we are more than our worst moment. That we can break the cycles that imprison us. That we can, despite everything, find light, even after the deepest darkness. If you made it this far and really understood what I went through, please like this video, subscribe to the Traumatic Accounts channel, hit the notification bell to receive notifications of new stories, and comment what time it is where you are right now. It may seem like a strange request, but knowing there's someone on the other side at this exact moment sharing a bit of this burden with me makes me feel less alone in this journey.